The chain of dogs stands as one of the most harrowing episodes in the history of the Malazan Empire. The cause of this grueling march across the continent of 7 cities was none other than the outbreak of the Whirlwind Rebellion, a massive, sweeping insurrection against Malazan rule, ignited by deep-seated resentment and the leadership of the prophetic seeress Shaik. When the Whirlwind Rebellion erupted, it swiftly transformed the political and social landscape of 7 cities, endangering Malazan civilians and soldiers alike. Coltaine, recently appointed as the Fist of the 7th Army, faced an unprecedented challenge. Cities and towns under Malazan control were besieged, and the safety of tens of thousands of non-combatants, men, women, and children, hung precariously in the balance. Understanding the dire consequences of confronting an overwhelming force driven by fervent revolutionary zeal, Coltaine made the fateful decision to conduct a tactical withdrawal. This was not a retreat, but a calculated maneuver to save civilian lives, guiding them from the besieged city of Hisar to the supposed safety of Aran, the last major Malazan stronghold in the region. As tensions escalated, Duiker, the imperial historian, was given the mission of overseeing the shipment of prisoners to the Otataral mines, notorious for their lethal conditions, particularly for mages deprived of their magical warrens. Amidst these observations, the arrival of Culp, the army's sole surviving mage, highlighted the severity of the situation, with a potential riot brewing among the ranks. When Coltaine arrived at the docks of Hisar, he found the Wiccans and Hisar Guard on the brink of conflict. The Hisar Guard, previously defeated by the Wiccans, were openly hostile. Recognizing the brewing violence, Coltaine intervened decisively. With a commanding cry, he transformed the chaotic scene into an organized display of discipline, preventing violence and reinforcing his authority over his troops. The Wiccans, plains warriors from the Quantali continent, played a pivotal role in this campaign. Historically divided into clans and often embroiled in internal conflicts, the Wiccans were united by Coltaine to fight for the Malazan Empire. The famous clans included Crow, Foolish Dog, and Weasel. Though initially defeated by the Malazan 7th Army, Emperor Kellanved managed to gain their loyalty, enlisting them to fight for the Empire. The 7th Army subsequently conquered and established their headquarters in Hisar, 7 cities. Following Kellanved's death and Lacine's usurpation, the Wiccans were relegated to rot in backwater villages. However, as the Genabakan campaign faltered and rebellion began to simmer in 7 cities, Lacine found herself in desperate need of competent leaders. In response, she appointed Coltaine, who had himself once led a rebellion, to command the 7th Army and quell the burgeoning insurrection in 7 cities. This decision marked the beginning of what would be known as the Chain of Dogs. Amid these strategic maneuvers, Duiker diligently documented the unfolding events, capturing the essence of the march and the myriad challenges faced by the Malazan forces. His records would later provide a crucial narrative, preserving the memories and sacrifices made during this critical period. At a strategic military council, Duiker greeted Coltaine, who recounted their past encounter in battle. They were joined by Bult, an older Wiccan warrior who had accompanied Coltaine to 7 cities before the onset of the Whirlwind Rebellion. Coltaine sometimes jokingly referred to Bult as uncle, although the truth of this claim remained unclear. Duiker recalled how he had once almost died by Bult's lance during the Wiccan Wars. In that encounter, Duiker redirected Bult's lance attack on Duiker, slashing his face. In the process, Bult's horse had crunched Duiker's arm, leading to its amputation and earning him the name Duiker One Arm. Back then, Duiker had worn no weapons or armor, but as he grew older, he took more precautions, mindful of the dangers they faced. The council session was further marked by the anticipation of Coltaine's warlocks. In historical context, the Empress Lacine, in her first year of rule, had ordered the mass crucifixion of all Wiccan warlocks, a brutal attempt to suppress any potential uprising. Despite this, the Wiccans harbored a resilient spirit, comforted by the belief that crows had come to collect the souls of the fallen, awaiting their reincarnation. During the council, a bow-legged boy with a goat's head hood was revealed as Sormo Nath, a powerful Wiccan warlock who had endured an agonizing death over 11 days. One crow came for each day to collect his soul. Duiker noted that Rivi of Genabakis had similar beliefs in newborns being the vessel to hold souls. Amid these grave discussions, Malik Rel, a figure in controversy and suspicion, delivered High Fist Pormqual's welcome to Coltaine, recognizing him as the new Fist of the Seventh Army. Malik Rel outlined new orders, which included a daunting march of 400 leagues from Hissar to Aran, intended to test the mettle of the Seventh Army. This directive, however, was met with skepticism by Bolt, who criticized it as a foolish endeavor, pointing out that such a march would leave the eastern 7 cities dangerously unprotected. Bolt's disdain for Malik Rel was obvious, dismissing him as merely a messenger boy and questioning his legitimacy within the High Command. Duiker also harbored suspicions about Malik Rel, whose meteoric rise was rumored to be fueled by nefarious means, including blackmailing High Fist Pormqual and eliminating obstacles in his path. These rumors, coupled with Malik Rel's questionable character and the lack of trust among the High Command, cast a shadow of doubt over his intentions and loyalties. Coltaine recognized early on the critical importance of preparedness in the face of the Whirlwind Rebellion's escalating threats. To this end, he commandeered a ruined monastery south of Hissar, repurposing it into a rigorous training ground. Here, under Coltaine's strategic direction, the Seventh Army engaged in intense war games that mimicked the harsh realities of battle, including street control, building assaults, and intricate rescue operations. These exercises were further intensified by Kulp, who employed magical illusions to simulate chaotic scenarios, pushing the soldiers to adapt and react under pressure. In a mock engagement meant to simulate real battle conditions, Corporal List was quickly killed within the first few minutes. Bolt promptly went to retrieve him, highlighting the importance of teamwork and recovery in actual combat. This drill demonstrated the Seventh Army's improvement. The Wiccan soldiers, typically formidable, suffered more casualties than the Seventh Army, signaling the latter's growing proficiency. Recognizing the strain on his troops from continuous drills, Coltaine granted them a day of rest to boost morale and stamina. This break significantly improved their performance in subsequent exercises. Pleased with their progress, Coltaine supported the final phase of the war games with his lancers and rewarded the troops with another day off after they successfully completed the exercises. Meanwhile, Duiker's return to Hissar offered a stark view of the ongoing conflict. He rode past scenes of Malazan soldiers impaled on spears known as sliding beds. Carefully avoiding Hissari locals and swarms of carrion cape moths, Duiker entered Hissar at night, finding the city eerily deserted with bodies strewn across the streets. He revisited the platform where Sormo had cast his rituals, realizing that Coltaine and the Seventh Army had been well prepared for a confrontation. The Hissari forces had tried and failed to trap the Malazans in their barracks while targeting the Malazan Estates district. However, this plan backfired when the Seventh Army broke through the initial wave of attacks and eliminated all Hissari in the central square. A native Hissari informed Duiker that the city was nearly empty because all able-bodied natives had been conscripted into Chemist Rilot's army of the Apocalypse. Despite rumors of its weakening, Chemist Rilot, a high mage thought dead from a power struggle with Sha'ik 10 years earlier, was still actively leading. By asserting his status as an elder, Duiker avoided conscription himself. Coltaine was leading a caravan of Malazan refugees, constantly harassed by local tribes from the nearby Oddans and taking in more refugees from the cities they passed. With Chemist Rilot planning to encircle and annihilate the refugee train in 3 days, The urgency of Coltaine's mission to lead his people to safety was acute, facing both strategic and humanitarian challenges on a perilous journey to Aran. Duiker continued his travels to reunite with Coltaine and the army. His pursuit leads him to the Sekala river, where he found Coltaine's camp bustling with activity. The camp was a melting pot of Malazan military forces and refugees, signaling the severity of their situation. Lull, the captain of the Sialk Marines, approached Duiker in the refugee camp sprawling across the Oxbow Island, where tens of thousands had made their temporary homes amidst the ongoing turmoil. Together, Duiker and Lull navigated through the dense camp to reach a designated council room, signaling a meeting of critical importance was about to commence. Inside the room, they were joined by Bult Captain Chend, who was previously unnamed in earlier reports, and Captain Sulmar. Soon after, Coltaine entered alongside Sormo Enath and a group of Wiccan youths, adding to the assembly of military minds. The captain of sappers remained missing like always. The council quickly dove into a discussion of tactics, focusing particularly on the logistics of crossing a strategic river. The proposed order of crossing prioritized wagons first, followed by the wounded, then livestock, and finally the refugees. During the debate, Captain Sulmer proposed giving priority to the nobles for crossing, a suggestion that was promptly rejected, highlighting the council's commitment to strategic fairness over hierarchical privilege. Unexpectedly, nobles Nethpara and Tumlet entered the room uninvited, presenting a list of grievances. The contrast between them was stark. Nethpara's approach was selfish and demanding, while Tumlet displayed a cooperative attitude towards the council's efforts. Tumlet also raised a logistical concern, noting the excessive number of wagons, which was unusually high given the recent skirmishes and the noticeable presence of sappers around these wagons, suggesting they were significantly heavier than usual. Following their interruption, both nobles were swiftly ejected from the room, underscoring the council's intolerance for disruptions. Amidst the tactical discussions, Sormo shared a troubling update. He was unable to locate their mage, Culp. He explained that the Soul Taken and divers had infested the warrens throughout the 7 cities in their quest for the Path of Hands, complicating their magical communications and logistics. As Coltaine's forces engaged in a meticulously planned crossing of the Sakala River, they faced simultaneous threats from multiple fronts. The Tithanzi charged, and the looming threat from Kamist Relo's forces tested Coltaine's strategic foresight. However, with Sormo's summoned spirits causing havoc among the enemy ranks, Coltaine's preparations paid off, allowing the livestock and most of the refugees to safely cross, setting the stage for the next phase of their arduous journey. As the refugees began moving under the herding of the Crow clan, supernatural events unfolded, with skeletal warriors rising from the eastern Oxbow Island, engaged in a ghostly reenactment of an ancient clan tragedy. Neil, a Wiccan warlock, explained that this tragic scene had once been a reality for the Wiccans until Emperor Kellanved intervened, mocking their internal strife and thereby winning their loyalty by showcasing the futility of their infighting. As Duiker crossed the ford, nobleman Tumlet's words echoed in his mind. He realized that the sappers had secretly filled the wagons with stone blocks and spent most of the previous night building a road on the ford. Once the refugees had safely crossed and the pursuing peasant army filled the ford road, the sapper Cuttle pulled a rope made from scavenged Tithanzi hair, detonating 55 cusses. The explosion rendered the ford untraversable, the sky raining blood and debris. The 7th Army, having successfully crossed the river, fought off the Semk tribes and native Guran soldiers. After this battle, some Malazan 7th Army soldiers proudly told Duiker they considered themselves Coltaine's soldiers. Following this, Coltaine set up fortifications and debriefed his officers. The toll was heavy. Captain Lull had lost half of his Sialk Marines, and there were significant casualties among the Weasel clan, The battle against the Semk claimed the lives of all the Red Blades, including Commander Baria Withdrawal, whom Coltaine honored for their sacrifice. 2 warlock children also perished fighting the Semk priests. The sappers mourned the loss of their precious cussers. Meanwhile, Chemist Relo's army, forced to detour around the now impassable ford, faced a delay of 10 to 11 days. In the midst of these strategic challenges, warlocks Neil and Sormo performed a powerful ritual, tapping into ancient Jagat sorcery to transform the landscape. They released a trapped Semk ascendant, which empowered the land spirits of 7 cities. This weakened the enemy's magical capabilities and provided a significant tactical advantage to Coltaine's forces. As the refugee train continued its arduous march westward, the strain on the defenders was immense. Only a fraction of the 7th Army and Wiccans remained to guard the 50,000 refugees. Amidst this, a nameless Titansi war leader emerged as a significant threat, skillfully harassing the train to exhaust its defenders. The relentless pressure from this war leader underscored the perilous nature of their journey and the constant vigilance required to ensure the safety of those under Coltaine's protection. As preparations were made for an expected battle at River Paartha, the stakes were high and the survival of the refugee train hung in the balance. As the siege conditions worsened, Duiker noticed troubling behavior among the Wiccan cattle dogs, which were possibly digging up child graves for food. Despite the grim circumstances, Duiker had earned enough respect that an elderly Wiccan horsewife offered him food. This moment stirred memories of his past, recalling when he was an illiterate 30-something, appointed by Kellenved to be the imperial historian and taught by Tok the Elder alongside Tok the Younger. In the midst of these preparations, Coltaine had conscripted the servants of the nobleman to help defend at Sekala crossing. This decision led to further tensions as the Council of Nobles demanded recompense and recorded their grievances to present for trial under Malazan law. As the preparations for crossing river unfolded, Duiker met up with Captain Lull and Corporal List. Captain Sulmar was frustrated, suspecting that the missing sappers and their captain had deserted, while Captain Chend dismissed this notion, believing the sappers were planning ahead. When the day of the battle arrived, the 7th Army rushed forward, spreading out and breaking the enemy front lines before drawing back. Neil and Nether led a horse to the front line as the armies on the ridge fully engaged in battle. Duiker found himself partnering with a female marine as Coltaine began pushing the army up the ramp. In a surprising move, a sapper suddenly emerged and shouted, "Guess what turtles do in the winter?" Both ally and enemy armies paused in confusion. It was then revealed that the sappers had buried themselves in the banks of the ridge before the battle began, now surfacing with shields on their backs. One sapper signaled for the Wiccans to advance while the others broke through Chemist Relo's elite soldiers at the top of the ramp using munitions. The armored heavy cavalry of the foolish dog clan charged forward, even stomping on the sappers who were saved by their shields. The Wiccans reached the top and chased away Chemist Relo's elites. 100 paces away, Chemist Relo had burned his command tent and fled. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the ridge, the 7th Army was being slaughtered by the enemy flanking armies. However, Wiccan cattle dogs appeared out of nowhere, launching themselves onto the enemy. The Weasel clan crossed the river and engaged from behind, while the foolish Dog clan rode down the rank to aid in chasing away the remaining enemy flanking armies. Exhausted, Duiker collapsed onto the ground. Captain Lull, his face severely injured by a mace, crouched next to him and revealed that the enemy Debral tribe had named them the Chain of Dogs. This was Coltaine's chain of dogs. He led, yet was led. He strained forward, yet was held back. He bared his fangs, yet what nipped at his heels, if not those he was sworn to protect,